Hey, welcome to part 2, where we're building an AI agent that runs inside of Obsidian and can customize Obsidian for you. It can write plugins, it can write themes, it can do whatever you want. It's like Cursor for Obsidian. In this part, we actually dive into the code, and we're going to go from just a few tools that sort of work to being able to run multiple agents together with one manager agent that talks to all its subordinate agents. I don't get it done in this video, but this is where I lay the foundation for the way that these agents are going to interact with each other and what ultimately becomes a system that you can see running in the background right now. All right, let's dive into it. All right, we're back. Building a plugin that is going to build plugins for you, or something like that. We want to give you your own personal dev team inside of Obsidian. That's the goal here in marketing terms. In technical terms, we are just going to build a bunch of for loops, or while loops, a bunch of loops that will send stuff to AI and get back other stuff. And some of those things, some of that stuff, is going to control your Obsidian. So, where we left off last time was I was toying with the idea, far too seriously, of building an MCP server for this thing, an MCP server to interact with Obsidian, which is a fine idea, except that I wanted to make use of Obsidian's plugin API. The plugin API is the API that is exposed to you if you build a plugin. Or if you can see it inside the Obsidian app. If you open up Obsidian and hit Command Option I on Mac, anyways, you open up the developer console, which is great. And then you can type app and you get the developer API, which is the app here. So the app lets you interact with pieces of your Obsidian vault. You can say app.vault, files, get files, get files. And then this gives us, enter, a list of all the files in this vault. This is my test vault. So this is my developer vault. So this is sort of all just made up content. I actually had an AI write a bunch of content, so it was real English prose, but nothing I had to write myself. So that's what all these files are, and you can see that we were able to get these, and we were able to get these by just calling this function. Great. So you have app.vault get files. Vault does a lot of things that you'd want to do. It does all the CRUD basically for your content. App.vault dot, what is it? Create binary if you want to create an image, create folder, etc. There's what is it? Modify, that's it. They call update modify, which is fine. Those are synonyms. Oh, there you go. So I wanted to expose this API to the AI. And it is definitely possible that you could get a lot done only by using the command line. So you could write an MCP server that just uses files on disk, because Obsidian will update when you modify files on disk. If you open a markdown file and just in some editor and type, Obsidian will update, which is great. But that's not what I wanted, because I want the AI to have more control over Obsidian. Things like controlling the active theme, being able to open and close windows, being able to modify the UI. That's what I want the AI to be able to do. And so I've started down that path. We have the developer console open here, and I actually went ahead and created this plugin. So the Obsidian meta plugin is here. It is not done, but I did the initial setup. We can open the editor here, and that's not what we want to look at. Let's look at plugin. So the way these things work is you just export a plugin from the main.ts or main.js file. And this is going to adhere to a specific API. You can see that we import plugin from Obsidian over here. Let's make that a little bit bigger. We import plugin and we extend plugin, and that is that. So on this, we can add whatever properties we want, this meta plugin. But most importantly, we have these onload, and on unload, these two hooks. These are the lifecycle hooks of an Obsidian plugin. And so this is where we can do sort of whatever we want. Onload, within onload, you can, where's onload? So you will have access to the app, which is at this app, right? The runtime of Obsidian is going to provide you this. And using this, you can this.app.whatever. Oh, you get a workspace. This is the whole API. So you can .vault, whatever. .modify. What does the AI think I'm going to do here? Anything? No. Anyhow, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. There's even some of this that's left over from the Obsidian boilerplate starter project that I started with. So you can go add a ribbon icon, which I did. We can see that in the UI here, which is what we saw at the beginning. Obsidian meta plugin has a icon here. And when it's clicked, we have this function that does a thing, which is activate the sidebar view. You'll see that. Activate. And so this pulls up the sidebar with this React component that I wrote. And this, what it does is it's roughly a chat interface that just does a few things. I left this all out of the video because setting up React, so this is an Obsidian environment. It does not support React out of the box. Setting up React is not that interesting. Setting up the base Obsidian plugin, also not that interesting, at least I thought so. I just had to get through it so that we could get further on. And so where we are now is we have this React component that'll do some things. We also have a settings panel. If we go back in the code, settings. Where is the settings? We can add commands. Command would be these things. So what is simple? One of them. Open sample modal. And we can see that. Where is it? Sample. This one. This has a callback which fires, which in turn instantiates this class. And that class in its open method is going to do, that's the type. This guy, where are you? On open. It is going to render some UI, basically. We have form create L, where's form instantiated. So on the class itself, you get the reference to an element, and so using that, you can go render whatever you want onto that element, including with React, which I did not do in the settings screen. Let's go over here. And if we open settings, you'll see where it appears. When you register a setting, it appears down here under community plugins with any of their registered settings. There's us. And you can see I added a few fields, such as your API key, the base URL, some pre-fills so that you don't have to remember the base URL because that is a pain. And the model selection. So this is all somewhat janky. It looks fine, but if we, for instance, go and I'm running Olama, so let's go look at Olama. This will pre-fill the Olama URL, at least the default one. And then we can't use any of these, right? These are from OpenRouter, so we hit refresh, and here we go. Now we can use local models, which is really nice for privacy. If you don't want to send all this information about your personal vault, you can use Olama or any API that exposes an OpenAI compatible endpoint, which they do. But I wanted to use OpenRouter because, let's refresh again, and we'll get this Optimus Alpha thing going. Because for now, at the time of making this video, OpenRouter has this stealth model, which is a thing, which is odd and interesting. Let's go open that. So if you go on OpenRouter, you will see that they have this model, which is a stealth model, the first one on their API, I believe. It's provided to the community to gather feedback, and everything you send here will be logged by whoever is on the other end of this, so take note of that. But in my case, this is a test vault with test content that I didn't actually write, so I'm happy to send it wherever. And most importantly, this is currently free and has a massive context window and is pretty capable. So that was a long-winded way of describing why I wanted to use OpenRouter here. And in general, if you have an OpenRouter API key, if you pay for OpenRouter, they have everything. All the models you can use here, with some notable exceptions would be Grok and Cerebras. I don't think Cerebras is in here. But those providers give you the same model, they just go a lot faster. In general, if you want to play around with different models, OpenRouter is great. And like I said, in this case, we have, at the moment, this free and very powerful AI that we can use, so we're going to try it out. Anyhow, that is what is in here in the settings UI. So to create the settings UI, there was just this create a form, and then within the form, create the H2. So that is the settings window is here under settings. And here it instantiates these settings classes that have this fluent style API. This is just the Obsidian API, and luckily AI knew it, so I just asked for what I wanted and got it. Vibes galore. Good vibes over here. Anyhow, let's close this out. The only reason this matters is that this is how we instantiate and set up the actual LLM provider. Because, at least for now, I'm not intending to just use my own API keys for other users, which is something that I do in Prompta, so it's not unprecedented. Where's the web version? Launch in browser. So if you come here, I provide these models free to users because they are very cheap, is basically, and I want people to be able to try this out. Hey, what are you? Great. But I'm not planning to do that in this case. Namely, because if you are using an agent, you probably want a pretty capable LLM, and the ones I'm providing for free on that site are not super capable. They are certainly capable of producing coherent English and a number of other languages, but we want function calling when we're using agents. We want the AI to understand when to call a function and make some judgment. So we want something more powerful. And for that reason, you can put in your API key, the base URL, etc. You can configure any LLM that is compatible with OpenAI, which OpenRouter is, and Ollama also is. And I would like to add Anthropic in here. It would not be a huge lift. It's just that, I mean, actually, the main reason is that the abstraction that I'm using here, which is this, where's the Bristol AI thing? AI. So this, I believe, inappropriately named library, which they just called AI. Good for them for buying this, I imagine. It's like buying a nice domain name. This, although I don't like the way they named the library, this does provide abstractions for us that let us use all these providers, including Anthropic, without much hassle, which is why I chose to use it in this project, because I do want to support Anthropic. I like the Anthropic models. I like Sonnet. It is currently my go-to, and it's what I'm using for all of the coding that I'm doing in these projects right now. You want to work here, cutie? All right, well, we'll stop this video for now.
爸爸在工作啊。
All right, onward. So, as I mentioned before, we want to build an AI agent. So, I'll show you what the simple demo, which is not done yet, looks like here, which is this thing can read my files. So, I should be able to ask it, what is the most recently modified file? Let's see if it can handle that. So it uses a tool, and it accurately says that this file that we're looking at right now is the most recently modified, which is good. So what did it do? It called this list files tool, and what that did is just gave this array back. It said, there's this file with its path, and it has the last modified time and has the size. And that's it. So with that information, the AI was able to give me what I wanted. So what else can we do at this point? We can ask it, what did I just ask? And it'll give you nothing. Well, it'll give you something, but it won't work. Because there is no history here. There is no conversation history. This is not actually a chatbot per se. It is an instruct bot, if you will. It just takes one message and spits out an answer, which is fine for our use case here for now. But ultimately we'll want to change that, so the system is not done yet. Let's ask something else. So can we, if we close and reopen, does it? Yeah, it does. I should probably add a clear button here, but I don't have that yet. So let's do reload the window, and we can come in here again. And we can ask it something that'll maybe use more of its tools. Say, what do I usually write about? And let's see what it does. It'll check the files. Okay, it's seeing what files. Now it's going to read individual files. This is accurate based on the demo content in this Obsidian vault. So that's nice. It can read files. It can list out the files. It can read the files. And so there's a bunch of data here, which is not displayed as markdown, which is fine. This is what the AI sees. That's all good. And now, what if we say, can you today's date? Let's see what it does. The note for today's date. Let's ask it to open it. Oh, I just realized. I just realized that the date was inaccurate. What did it create? Let's see. Let's open the sidebar. So we have this date, which is not today's date. It did create a note though, which is nice. So a few things that come to mind. We need to add today's date, current date. What else do we need? Create files works, which is nice. Let's see the date. Let's just copy this. We'll see if we can update this file. Okay, it's trying to read. And I suppose this is going to fail. All right, so this is failing without some sort of timeout. So it just doesn't actually work, interestingly. And what it should have done is first read the list of files to see if that file exists. So let's go and look at the actual thing here. Not that. The actual tools that we have, they're in this file called Obsidian, and we have tool. So we have list files, read files, create file, update, and search the vault. So this searches vault content, notably. We could also add another one for file names, I suppose might be a good idea. Let's do that right now. I've been experimenting for the past hour or so with this max version of 3.7 Sonnet, which is actually simply cursor using 3.7 Sonnet in thinking mode with a whole lot of context. Search the vault by file name rather than by file content. Yep, this all seems fine. Seems fine. In theory, pagination would be good for the LM, but only in theory. Because if you have, I can just do a quick demo here. Demonstration, not a demo of something that doesn't exist. This is my actual Obsidian vault that I use with my real notes. And see, we have this skeleton for later. But if we could look at how many files are in here, let's say app.vault.getFiles.length. So there are some 2,600 files in this vault. That is quite a bit. It's nowhere near big data, obviously, but for an LM, it's a lot to shove into context, especially when you're probably only going to be interested in a few of those files at most. So LMs prevent this. LMs present a new constraint, which is that you don't want to bloat context too much. Although, by the time you watch this, who knows? Maybe that's out the window. Maybe no one cares anymore. Although I suspect it'll still remain a consideration, even with the likes of OpenRouter. Where's that? Optimus. Even with the likes of 1 million context window models, and Google has had this for a while now, so this isn't necessarily new. Even with models that can support so much context, it still bloats cost if you're shoving in a bunch of tokens that you don't actually need to be putting in there. What is it for Gemini? Gemini Pro. Yeah, million context. So $1.5 per million input tokens. So if you are filling this context, every single request is going to cost you $1.25, which is not a lot individually, but that could add up very quickly, especially when you're doing something like tool use, which makes many, many calls to the agent. So my point here is that even as context windows expand, I suspect that it'll still be desirable not to put too much data into context if cost is a concern, which it is for any platform, although for our use case here, it's probably not, because you're using this all personally. This is for an individual user with their own individual data, so it's probably not a big deal. Anyhow, so this failed miserably, and by miserably, I mean it didn't even throw an error, which is pretty rough. So we need to handle that. In fact, we're getting to the point now where I need to be able to record what's going on and keep track of it without having to handle it immediately. So I am going to go ahead and create a project. So I use linear for this kind of thing, and I'm going to create a project, Obsidian meta plugin. Great. The plugin that builds other plugins. In theory, this is going to be in progress, and that's about it. That is about it. Create, and then can we go to that project? New project. Great. And so the reason to create this is just to have a place to drop things like this as they search files by name. All right, I want to accept this. This is probably fine, except we are vibing here. We're just playing fast and loose with the code base. Search. Files tool, search. Oh, it's search vault tool, isn't it? Search, name, that one. So we got these. So now our Obsidian content agent here can do all these things. And we could continue to add to that list, although I don't think that's the right move here. I think it's going to be more useful to have multiple agents. So this one is maybe nearing feature completion, this agent, because it can do all these things. Although we have to handle errors, which is what I wanted to make a note about. But generally speaking, I think we don't need any more tools other than maybe a delete note tool. But in the beginning, I don't intend to... I'd like to minimize the destructive actions that this extension can take because it's just an AI running this thing. And so the AI can definitely make mistakes. All right, we'll see if Obsidian updated, I'm not sure. But let's make a note about this. So going over here, read files, tool, fails silently, file doesn't exist. Let's add that here. It might not actually be failing, but rather the UI failing to report the failure. Regardless, the end behavior of the UI here was to simply pause and never continue. Block and never continue. Sounds better. All right, so bug, this is a bug, and that's that. Okay, so let's try again. What do I like to write about works? What's my most recent created file? Oh. Let's go ahead and resolve one particular issue, which is that our agent here has no access to the current date. So this is going to be important, most likely for interacting with daily nodes. And actually, let's go ahead and just considering what to name things. Let's go ahead and how do I interact with the daily note in Obsidian using the plugin API? All right, let's go ahead and change this. I'm just gonna see if we can find out how does the API handle daily notes. App dot what? Workspace vault dot. I suspect it doesn't have a helper for this because you can derive the date from new date, right? To ISO, and then right like that. Split T, and then the first one is the date. At least the UTC date, but we can also do the same thing. We can do something similar for, what is this? Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So someone built a helper for it. So we could do that, but we're not going to right now. And I don't think we'll need to if we have access to the current date and time. Why not? Date. So here is the local time, and of course the ISO string, as we saw, is the UTC time, the current moment. So let's quickly add a new tool here. I'm just gonna, we are in Obsidian, but let's get a, what to call it, locale, not TS. Sort of a generic way of describing date, time, location. I don't think we'll need location, but just in case. Anyways, naming things is hard, right? So maybe it's a terrible name. We'll see. I'm going to do the same thing we did here, get the tools going, and I still don't have a good abstraction for this, which is declaring what the shape of the context is here. So you'll notice we're using this library called AI for tool, which just wraps an object. So I was using it, namely you get this first argument here is going to be the shape of whatever you pass into here with Zod. So this is passing nothing, right? But we can, actually we think we want to pass nothing here as well, which is get current date time. All right, yeah, we'll just tab our way to success. Local. And yes, UTC. We'll return them both just in case it is relevant. And we don't need the app, right? We don't actually need the app here. We don't need any of that. We don't need that. We don't need any of that. Okay. Simple. It does want parameters. All right, simple enough. We don't need that. We don't need that. Okay, so we can nice and simple. So now, of course, where do we put this? Where do we put this tool? We can, and let's do this just to see. Put it there. Come on, handle my imports for me. We can put it here, and then our agent will be able to use it. Let's try that, and we'll go here. Good. The hot reload plugin. There is a plugin called Hot Reload for Obsidian, which is not available on the Obsidian plugin store, just so you know. But it is available on GitHub, and you can install it yourself. And what it does is it hot reloads your extensions. So that is actually something we're going to want in this plugin here, because one of its functionalities is going to be to write code for you, and it'll need to refresh your plugins after it updates them. But we're not there yet. So where are we though? So I wanted to talk about this whole idea of where do we put the tools. The list of tools is getting longer and longer here. And as the tools get longer, your prompt gets longer because these are all put into the prompt. The API, if we have oh, it is here, isn't it? Like if we go in here and we have, where's LM? Okay, so this .api dot completions.create or whatever. What is it? Chat.completions.create. And here we could do something like this. Great. And we can do, yeah, there we go. Tools. Right, and that won't work. But the point I'm trying to make here is that when you add these arguments in, this with the SDK, but ultimately this is going to go into the prompt. So the more tools you have, the larger your prompt is going to be. And tools can be pretty verbose out of the box because of the schema they use. I believe it's JSON schema, but regardless of what it is, it's a bit verbose. There's quite a lot of text that goes into it, so quite a lot of tokens. And we don't want to bloat our token count. But actually, more importantly, we don't want to confuse the model. Where was I? So as we build our list of tools here, we can expand this forever in theory, right? And it will all take up space and context. And so depending on the model we use, this will become a problem eventually, or it won't. If we're using the million token context model, then it won't be a problem in terms of the number of tokens we're sending, but it might be a problem in terms of confusing the model, as they say, in terms of giving it too much information, too much to choose from. So for that reason, I think it's going to be good to break this out. Regardless, though, let's make sure it works. Let's make sure it works. So hey, where's this button? Time. Do the tool call, great. Yep. Great, and you can see 7:30 up here in the corner of my screen, so that is accurate. Good job. I wonder why I can't select this. That's odd. But not something to worry about right now. Actually, that's cannot select text output by in the sidebar. So what I think makes sense here is to have a multi-agent architecture where we have different agents that are responsible for different things. For instance, this agent, which we have called Obsidian Content Agent, should basically do CRUD on the Vault contents. And by that I mean the content that the user writes. So not the plugins, not the themes, and not the settings, but rather all of the content. And this pattern will just follow. My thinking now is that we roughly follow this pattern, build CRUD for those different domains, the plugins, the themes, the settings, and the content. And we have it for the content. So I don't think this should go here, basically. Where should it go? Well, initially, or for now, I think we can put it on the top level agent. But to do that, we're going to need a top level agent, right? Which is what I started doing here. We go into my own actual Obsidian here. So we have an agent. We could put this in quotes, which is really just some configuration, like what tools, what model, the prompt, the system prompt, I should say. System prompt. That doesn't look great, but that's okay. And maybe some other configuration, maybe. And a for loop. And that's basically it. So we could have written this ourselves, not too difficult, but since that same library, the AI library, does this for you, I figure we'll just use that library. So the for loop is implicit, it's handled for us, but this is what an LM agent is. And so what? Well, it can select amongst its tools. So let's say we have, let's go and make more of this. So let's say we have the content agent. Content agent. And what it is going to do is going to have tools that are basically, we'll delete some of this, we don't need that. The tools are going to be CRUD on content. And by that I mean create, read, update, delete. That's what CRUD stands for. So it's going to be able to modify the contents of your vault, basically the content agent. And so I want the same thing for settings. For settings, plugins, and themes. These are the domains of Obsidian in my mind. These are the various pieces of the system. So you have content, settings, plugins, themes, and this is where I think the meat of this extension will be here. The most interesting piece will be this, plugins here. But in order to be successful at plugins, I think we also need to be able to handle themes, which are also going to be interesting, right? You can just ask for a different look. You can say, make Obsidian look like Darkula, or give me a light theme. And it'll either write it for you, or it'll just select an existing one. So that's good. That's what we want. But settings is integrated with plugins, and that one of the settings you have to configure is whether or not a plugin is enabled. So if we're creating new plugins here, we're going to need to be able to control settings as well. And beyond that, I think it'd be nice to just be able to, this is true of any application actually, I think it'd be nice just to be able to ask for something and get it. So like change the font size, for instance. Rather than having to know where to go to actually do that, it'd be nice if you could just ask for it, right? I think so. Anyways, it's an experiment. We'll see. So given these domains, I think we should have different agents. And then how do we route between them? How do we decide what to do? Well, I suggest that we have another agent that does that job. So this is the manager. The team manager, the squad manager, and squad manager handles all of this. They decide who gets tasked with what and coordination between them. Manager wears what? Do they wear yellow? Green? Maybe they wear green. And so the agent that the system is talking to is going to be this one. That's how I'm envisioning it now. So we'll see if it actually works well enough to be useful, but this is the idea. Oh, I should have updated this too. We have CRUD on content. We have CRUD on settings. I guess we have create. We have RU on settings, which is read and update. And a better way to write that is actually RW. Read, write. And for plugins, we have CRUD on the plugins. Although, we don't want to modify plugins that didn't come from this extension, but that's something to handle later. And themes, same. We have CRUD on themes. We do want to be able to delete themes, at least the ones that we've created. All right, so this is the idea here, and it's not what we have now. So in practice, how can we do this? Well, we have this agent class, and this agent class is completely made up by me, because my view of all of these tools that exist out there is that they're usually an unnecessary abstraction. And so we have this agent class, which is line 32 to what? To line 95. So all this does is it wraps up some settings for us and allows calling, and it's sort of like a partial application as a class. It wraps up some settings for us and gives us two methods which mimic these same helper functions from the AI library, which is to generate text, which is non-streaming, and to stream text, which is streaming. And that is that. And also the tools all get wrapped. This is just dependency injection. This is just being able to pass additional arguments to the tools outside of the LLM. The LLM is going to pass arguments, but they need to be serializable. And so, for example, in our case here, if we want our tools, which we can see in Obsidian, if we want them to be able to access the vault, where does that vault come from? Well, it can come from options.context, and that's what that's all about. Passing in the context, which we do in plugins. We didn't call it context. I didn't name it context. What did I name it? Stream. No, it's not in this file. Where? It's in stream. I think it's in here. Yes. So here, the formatting doesn't necessarily make it that obvious, but first argument are the general arguments to stream text. So we have an instantiated agent, and you can call stream text, and then you can pass in these standard arguments that I will take, and you can also pass in a context, which is this object here, this thing. And doing that, we pass in the app itself, and that is how, at long last, we are able to access the app within our tools here. And our tools are just defined at the top level. They will have this dependency injected later. They will be passed in the relevant arguments to do their job, which is great. And it's good for testing too. So that's the idea, and that is roughly what this class does. So now that we've covered that, let's make this system of delegation. Let us create this manager class. So my thinking here, although I haven't yet implemented it, is that we have this manager agent, and so you help, no, that's not right. You manage a team of expert of Obsidian task. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And so whatever agents we end up having here, I want to augment the prompt with the agents that we're going to be using. But to start, the general idea here is that you have an agent that has tools. And so if you want to allow an agent to have other agents, what it really needs is just a tool that sends some prompt to those agents, gets a response, and that's it. That is all there is to it. So I wanted to create a helper for this so we could do things like this. So we could just have this other thing more agents. So we just pass in a number of agents. And I even considered having a agents argument here, which we could easily do once we have this working, because ultimately under the hood, it's going to work the same. To delegate to another agent is going to be a tool call. And so we need a tool for each agent, or a tool that allows calling to the specific agent. And that will give us the functionality we want. So create Obsidian content agent is it's here, and create delegation tool. So this is not done yet, but the idea is that over here, we need to delegate the task to the agent. So there are some questions which I have not yet answered, such as in our UI here, not here, here. I can just say list my files, right? And it'll go do it. And it'll show me, right now we have the arguments, which were nothing, and we have the output. What if it's an agent though? What do we do? How do we display that to the user rather? Because an agent can have multiple steps. Each of these agents is its own for loop, or its own while loop, more likely. It's its own loop that's going to go and continue iterating indefinitely. How do we surface that to the user? I'm not sure yet, but likely I suspect it'll be something like an event listener. Or something like after we call the agent, we go and grab the steps that it took to complete the task, and then we can render them to the user. Anyhow, I did not name his task. So let's see. I'm going to ignore that. And in this case, I'm going to see what the AI has us do. I implemented this in another project, but I'm curious what the latest and greatest AI is going to tell us we should be doing. So let's ask this. I'd like a seamless way to allow delegation from one agent to another. Delegation will be done by a tool call, which is what we're defining here, the tool that will end up calling out to other agents. We are going to get an array of agents, and we need to select amongst those agents based on an agent ID. We can assume that the calling code will have the agent ID ready and handy. We will pass in to the parent agent the various IDs of its sub-agents. So we need to take that as a parameter. We need to take the prompt as a parameter. And then we ultimately need to hand off the task to the sub-agent, let it run its course, which may be multi-step, and then return to the calling agent. Let's see what it can do with that. Be right back. So it looks like this is in a TypeScript doom loop. Oh, no, got it. All right, let's see what it does. What it did, I found it hard to read the diff view, so let's just accept. Yep, so we want to surface this to the user. What else? On. Okay, step. What is it? Agent ID. All right. We'll just do something like that. Assuming that works. We will see. So we're just going to tell the agent to do a thing, and that'll be that. Options context as any. Okay, I think that's fine because we are not using the types here per se. We're just passing this in, and we're going to hope that it's the right value at runtime, but we're not using these types. And any validation we should be doing with Zod anyway, so I think this is an okay use of any. So what are we doing? So go and find the agent based on the name, agent ID. All right, create reports tool. So then, given this, we still have an issue. Or at least we have a TypeScript issue, which is more or less of an issue depending on how you want to define it. So this is great output, right? Classic TypeScript. But we have the Prettify plugin here, which look at this scroll bar. Look at that. So we scroll down to the bottom. What did they give us? Blah, 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 blah. Not assignable to never. So tool call, I'm not sure what the issue is with the underlying types, but I've encountered this before, or something related to tool call, where tool call just doesn't think that tool call is a possible value to be streamed, which is unfortunate because clearly it is. But if we look at the agent definition, agent, so we have these nicely inferred parameters. And my guess is that the inference is not running correctly. We have a known. It's not running correctly for the nested agent. So if we go over here, what is the issue here? We take in the type of agent, right? Take in the type of the agent, and then what? Is it that it doesn't extend agent? I'm not sure. What if we didn't extend agent? Can we just... guess that's... okay, so now this works. Where is it? So that's interesting. Then this works now, but of course we don't. Why can't we have it extend? Perhaps it's that the agent takes 3 types. So let's just, in this case, let's ask. And then Obsidian index is in here. Huh. Yeah, and then what? View problem, and then where's the copy button, guys? All right, so I'm gonna give this a quick try, or rather, I'm gonna give it one run through the LM and then forget about it. Then we'll just do some TS ignore and revisit maybe later. Because I think that this will work at runtime, and that is what's really gonna be important here. Manage a team, agents, 0 dot, what do I got? Name and instructions. So let's go here. Let's see about that. All right. So let's go and incorporate team manager agent. So we have this guy over here. Create team manager agent. And then here, create team manager agent. Y. Okay, yeah, don't do that. All right, so we're gonna do that, and then that'll be that. Let's try again. So, show me my files. Huh. Why are you still thinking, though? Interesting. That worked, but it took forever. All right, welcome back after a brief hiatus. So I've made a bit more progress on the extension here. The Obsidian plugin that can write other plugins, well, not yet. And so a few things. One, we tried the agent approach, and it's a bit slow, but it does work. So I am thinking that's a good direction to go in. I'd like to continue using the agent approach. So here is Here's our code right now. We have a few things. I've added the Obsidian content agent, which is CRUD, over your content files. At least that's the idea. You can search files, search the vault, and of course you can do CRUD stuff. I didn't add delete here, not yet. But for when this isn't enough, I added sort of a stand-in down here, the Obsidian API agent. And what this does is it just gives the AI access to, if you open, to the app object, this thing. And this lets the, this exposes a lot of functionality. App.vault, vault. This can control your settings, your plugins, etc. if the AI knows how to use Obsidian. And it sort of does sometimes. It's definitely not a clear yes, it knows how to do everything. But for instance, let's have an example. Or real quick, and then there's the manager agent, which is the actual one that you talked to initially. So if we go in here, we can say what theme is enabled. And we'll see what it says. So it is hitting, where's that agent? It's calling this agent now. And this agent is just gonna write some code that's gonna hit the API. And we'll see what it gives us. So it was able to get the answer. The default theme and the blue topaz theme. So if we go in here and we can look at where's appearance, you can see we do need blue topaz and there are no other themes installed. So that is accurate, and it was able to do that because there's no, I don't have a good UI for this yet. So what it did is it asked its sub-agent, hey, please check which theme is currently blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then it delegated, and then we got back this result, which is poorly formatted. Currently active theme, blah, blah, blah. So it looks like it roughly just parroted back what the agent said, which is fine. This sort of goes back to the point from the last segment about how it is slow or slower than having it do all this directly. Anyhow, so we can do that. We can use functionality that doesn't exist in the CRUD app, and let's do some of the CRUD functionality though. Let's say, I'm going to clear this. Clear conversation. Do I have a daily note for today? We'll check. And we can see in the console a bit of what it's doing. So the system is wrong here. Check if I have a daily note. What it really should do, and it did do this, it just did a bit more, a bit extra that we didn't want. It checked if this file exists. So it doesn't, but it like is talking about a plugin here. I don't know that there's a daily notes plugin, or is there one of the core plugins? Daily. Hey. So there is a daily notes plugin. I thought it was just sort of built-in functionality. Is not currently enabled. So this is wrong, right? It's already hallucinated, which is not great. And furthermore, it's used the plugin API, which is super general, when it could have delegated to the content agent, and it should have. So we need some better prompting here. Anyhow, let's go. Okay. Create the daily note. Don't add any content yet. Let's see if we can do this, and let's see which agent it uses. Okay, so I think the prompting is pretty bad because it really, really, really should be using the content agent here, which has these nice tools like create, read, etc. Because these, we know they'll work. When it's just using the API directly, hey, and it opened it too. Let's go ahead and look at what it did. I'm curious. Stream response. We gotta find it. On my list of to-dos, I should really add. Do I already have it here? Okay, I need to add sub agent step. Also, poor UX. It takes a long time without feedback. All right. Oh. would be. But not needed and more complex. Okay, so that added a note to myself. So we have the daily note. And let's see, is it still going to use the API? Or, all right, we want to get this tool. Tool, content, tool result. So we have the tool result. Where's the step? Obsidian plugin step, tool result. Where is the one we're looking for? I'm encountering an issue. So there's step. So let's see, I'll help you. And then we had a tool call. So the first thing it did was, finally we get in here. So the first thing it did was it sent this. It sent this through to Obsidian. And it said, all right, app plugins get plugin, daily notes, and all right, daily notes plugin is already enabled. We'll go down here. Let's see what this one was. Okay, interesting. So this worked, and it actually gave us the outcome we wanted, which was just open the daily note and create it. And so it was able to do it. Or well, let's see. What was the result? Was the result a success? Tool, content. Hey, it was a success. All right. So it ended up doing something different, which is okay, but still not what I actually wanted it to do here. I wanted to use the built-in APIs, the APIs that we've created, if available. Otherwise, it'll just use the Obsidian app object directly. And because this worked, you might think, or hey, it's reasonable to say, well, that's great. Let's just do that. In fact, let's just give it full access to the API and call it a day. But the problem is that, at least in the case of Sonnet, it's not that good at writing plugins. It's okay. And it has this feedback loop where if it gets an error, it'll try again, but it simply doesn't know the API. So we could hand it all the API documentation, which is an option. It's just that that'll eat up a ton of tokens, especially if we're sending it with every request. Something to think about. Let's try another one. Great. And a short poem about PKM tools to the daily note. Now let's see, is it going to use the API, or is it going to, yeah, it's going to use the API. So it's really stuck on this API thing. Yep, great. So point being though, that it actually can do stuff with your vault now. Nice. Which is exactly what we wanted. It's just like the whole experience is a bit rough, and it's not yet capable of doing something like theming, for instance. So for the next steps, I'm going to wrap this one up here, this session. For the next steps though, I want to do a few things. I want to make it more visible what's going on with the tool calls. And I want to get started with the actual having it modify code on disk. And to do that, my thinking is that we will start with themes, because themes fundamentally won't delete your data. Well, unless the AI does something crazy. If I ask it to create a theme or modify a theme, it won't delete your actual notes here. So it's sort of a safer way to get started. And it's fundamentally the same problem as writing plugins, just a bit less complex, because you're only going to be modifying a CSS file, basically. And for plugins, there could be any number of JavaScript files, although initially it will just be a main.js. So to get moving towards writing plugins for you and writing functionality, we're going to start with having it write themes, or be able to write a theme and be able to customize the look and feel of the app. So for instance, I want to say, make all the ribbon icons red. That should happen. All right, there we go. So I will see you hopefully in the next video where we get some real meta functionality going.